Okay. Hi, everyone. Hi, friends. I'm Gennia Nuh, and I'm the project lead for the Story Project 11 by www.tellmeyourstories.biz. And I welcome you to the third episode of the Letters from Santa series. The project Letters from Santa is addressed to parents and children, and though we know that Santa is a mythical creation, but most of us are blessed with the participation of our parents, especially our mothers in our life, who look after us, take care of us, fulfill our wishes, and guide us in the right path. This project aims at providing insightful guidance and evoke interest in certain aspects of life that may shape the life of the children better. Today, I'm privileged to have with us Haimanti Bagchi, Smeetha Bhowmik, and Akhila Mohan CG this evening, and we are going to discuss vernacular prose and poetry in India. So let me begin with introduction of the panelists. Haimanti Bagchi is a communication trainer, business storyteller, artist, and independent researcher focused on creating awareness of indigenous culture, art, and literature. Her poems and short stories have been part of various anthologies and digital platforms. She is the co owner of the creative firm based in Chennai, Art Lit, an art and literary community, which is a platform to promote creativity in the field of art and literature.
Thank you so
Let me
much for
then,
having me.
yes, thank you so much for being in the panel today. So now I go move on to Akhila Mohan CG, ma'am. Akhila Mohan CG is a poet, writer, research scholar, and creative entrepreneur based in Bengaluru. Her write ups have been published in national and international literary journals and anthologies, including TMYS Review, Scarlet Dragonfly, Juggernaut, and others. Tamarind, sweet and sour poems about love, loss, longing, and life, published by Kitab, is her debut poetry collection. She is also the recipient of the PB Shelley International Poetry Award 2021, and she is the co founder of a creative firm, Artlit, an art and literary community. Coming on to Smeetha Bhowmik, she is a poet, artist, editor, and founder of the We Literary Community, the short form of Women Empowered, which was founded in the year 2016. She is also the founding editor of Yogin Quest Review and author of two poetry collections. She is instrumental in establishing poetry awards like the We Kamla Das Poetry Award and We Eunice D'Souza a Poetry Award, among others. In art, her major theme is the Universe series in oils and mixed media. So I welcome you with a warm heart to this new series, to this new session of the Letters from Santa. And let's set sailing. Now, my first question will be addressed to all, and each of you will be getting a chance to answer it. My first question is like, please give me some insight about the vernacular prose and poetry that you have grown up listening to, and your experience of listening to those. I'll begin with Hoimuntidi.
Thank you so much, Gennia. And I'm really appreciating the way this project Santa is going on, and it's very interesting. And the panel discussions, I am listening to all of them, and I'm sure that it's going to rock. Coming back to your question, that the two vernacular languages which I have grown up listening to, reading, and speaking as well, is and Bangla. Hindi as a language, because I was born in Kolkata, but I was brought up in a small town called Devas in Madhya Pradesh. It was a small town, so everyone used to speak in Hindi. So Hindi was something which came very naturally. And when you talk about the prose and poetry, poetry and prose both used to be, on my reading lists, like the stories from Panchatantra, Jatak tales, and obviously there were epics, certain, stories story collections from the epics Ramayana, Mahabharata. And there used to be, I remember, a big illustrative book which I used to, really love reading. That was a part of Ramayana. So there were this beautiful pictures drawn. So I remember as a child. And apart from that, if you talk about listening, then probably at that time I was growing up in 90s. The television was not, really having a lot of channels. It was just Doordarshan. And on Doordarshan also, only on Sundays there used to be a slot. If I'm not mistaken, it was 9 to 11 or something. So this slot was something which I really looked forward to, because there used to be animated series like DuckTales was there, Popeye the Sailor. Then if I remember, there was Chandrakanta, Shaktiman, and all. So yeah, so these were the narratives I heard from the different mediums. And if you talk about poetry, I would read illustrations and poetries from Mahadevi Verma a lot. So apart from poetry, I remember prose from Premchand, and there were Tagore classics, and can't forget Akbar Birbal, Tenali Raman, and obviously there were animal fables and a whole lot of stories. In school, I would read. Mostly these were textbooks in which these particular writers would be, read. Then there was Bangla. Bangla was my, mother tongue. So my parents used to be very strict that you don't speak Hindi at home, at least. We all spoke and communicated in Bangla at home. And my mom was very specific about that I should learn Bangla as a language, because that will keep me rooted, she believed. And growing up, in my growing up years, I could not read it. I could not read Bangla text. So my mom would read it out to me, and there were various which whenever we came to Kolkata, it was bought by my mom, and she would carry them there. She would read out to me religiously every night before we sleep, and these stories were so intriguing. Some of them I remember, there were stories from Thakuma Juli, and obviously mythological tales were there. Then in poetry, I remember Abul Tabul, which was kind of very funny and very entertaining for me. And I was so intrigued by them that I would keep on telling her to repeat. So one story I would not hear once, I would hear it twice, thrice, four times in a row, and she would get really irritated that what is happening. But then these stories kept me thinking about how it would have been. I would imagine the things. So going through all of these stories, all across different corners of India, one from the far west and one from the eastern part of India. And obviously my grandmother used to, I did not get a lot of time with my grandmother though, but whenever I would come down to Kolkata in my summer holidays, she would let all of our cousins sit together like a children thing, and she would narrate stories from her childhood. I believe that a lot of stories came from there as well. And I would say that it was not written somewhere, but these were stories probably she has lived. So the experience was very engaging for me as a child. When I talk about vernacular, yeah, I think, yeah, this is the thing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dee. Now, moving on to Smeetha, ma'am. Ma'am, if you would give your insight about the vernacular prose and poetry that you have grown listening to, and how did you experience it as a child?
Good evening. Thank you, Gennia, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you, Haimanti, for taking us down memory lane in that beautiful way. And, all the Panchatantra and the night tales by monks, so much in common. And being Probashi, we have also faced that same, divide between Hindi and English, the Bangla, the time aspect of it. So let me begin my part by thanking TMYS for this wonderful, marvelous opportunity to rediscover and dwell on very precious literary creations that have enriched my life in languages like Sanskrit, Hindi, Bangla, Urdu, and English, of course. So I shall be presenting some very memorable works in the languages mentioned, and in doing so, also touch upon the relationship between our classics and vernaculars, the role that Sanskrit played in development of vernaculars, and of course the impact of Bhakti, Sufi, and Vaishnav movements. So let me start off. A deep adoration and appreciation of nature as a breathing, bountiful force that unites, along with feelings of beauty and bhakti, are the most significant hallmarks of our diverse yet connected vernacular languages and philosophy. Our ancient land of learning and glory is made up of languages so rich and beautiful, they flow like rivers and roll off our tongues from a source startling in its perfection, Sanskrit, which is 3,000 years old, and only Tamil is older. Bhakti, beauty, and an abiding philosophy of dharma, that is the right path, are imbued in our languages. Dharma, the concept of divine justice, bhakti, and philosophical foundations of love, form the very basis of our vernacular languages, born as they are of traditions of love and tales of victory of good over evil, as translations of Sanskrit sacred texts, Ramayana, Mahabharata, the Vedas, Upanishads, and also evolving during the Bhakti, Sufi, Vaishnav spiritual movements in medieval times. The movements led to great strides in our vernacular literary achievements. Here is a shloka we have grown up with. It is one of the most important and famous shlokas of the Gita in the voice of Lord Shri Krishna in the Mahabharata when Arjun refused to fight in the Kurukshetra. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirбhavati bharata abhyuthanam adharmasya tadatmanam shujamyaham परित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय च दुष्कृतम् धर्मस्थापनार्थाय संभवामि युगे युगे. My translation is, whenever dharma or the right path disappears, I arrive. When injustice abounds, I arrive. To protect the good people and to destroy evil, I arrive. To establish the right way, I take birth through the ages. The majestic force of such luminous thoughts illuminates our regional languages. Natural and effortless is the unity of vernacular languages because, like tributaries of great rivers, they have evolved from the same sources, dating back centuries and connected to traditions of wisdom and knowledge, learning and devotion, honed over hundreds of years that define who we are. Bhakti movements, Sant Tukaram's poem speaks of unity. When thus I lose myself, translation by a Marathi scholar, when thus I lose myself in thee, my God, then do I see and know that all the universe reveals your beauty, all living beings and all lifeless things exist through you. Let's take a look at our classic and vernacular languages. We have 6 classical languages. Tamil is 5,000 years old, Sanskrit, Kannada, Telugu 3,000 years old, Malayalam, Oriya 2,000. The vernacular languages are descended from the classical ones, mainly Sanskrit, and are between 1500 and 700 years old, first emerging as translations of sacred songs and hymns or messages of the spiritual movements that swept the country in medieval ages. The vernacular languages are Assamese, Hindi, Bengali, Oriya, Marathi, Gujarati, Punjabi, Sindhi, Hindi, Kashmiri, and Urdu. Urdu is 700 years old and is rich beyond measure. Take this share by the great poet Mirza Ghalib that offers deep understanding in amazing ways. इशरत कतरा है दरिया में फना हो जाना, दर्द का हद से गुजरना है दवा हो जाना. इशरत कतरा है दरिया में फना हो जाना, दर्द का हद से गुजरना है दवा हो जाना. A droplet in ecstasy drowns in the ocean, pain beyond endurance becomes medicine itself. Hindi, young at 800 years, is a descendant of Sanskrit, influenced by many languages. Listen to this beautiful Kabir Doha that we were taught in school. Sai itna dijiye, jame kutum samaye, मैं भी भूखा ना रहूं, साधु ना भूखा जाए. God give me enough to sustain my family so I don't go hungry, nor does the saint. Such writings of sages, prophets, and wise people have been our guiding lights, instilling virtues of love, sharing, and caring. The Bhakti and Sufi movements filled the Indian subcontinent with hearts rejoicing in abundant love, and the saints lived and worked among the people, sharing enlightened philosophical ideas. They spoke in vernaculars to be better understood, and this had a great impact on the growth and development of regional vernacular languages. In Bengali, my most favorite poet is Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore, and have grown up participating in many dance dramas like Chitramgada and Shama. As children, we loved so many songs like Aaj Amader Chuti O Bhai, Aaj Amader Chuti, Aha Ha Ha, Megher Kule Rod Hesheche Badol Gache Tuti, Aaj Amader Chuti O Bhai, Aaj Amader Chuti. Favorite adventure Bengali tales featured Bimal Kumar, Jayanto Manik, Shundu Babu, and Norohari the Cook. Folk tales were a favorite always, of course, and Mojuntali Sharkar the cat. Shibram Chakraborty's chora or verse made us happy and also made us laugh. Koi, Nelo, Bhuto, Pacha, Hudo, Tora Shop Eshichis? হ্যাঁ স্যার. কই পাগলা কই রে? আগে মাস্টারমশাই সে আসেনি. আসেনি তবে কেন বললি হ্যাঁ স্যার? আগে মাস্টারমশাই আমরা এসেছি তাই বলেছি, ও আসেওনি বলেওনি. বটে, চুপ করে বসে থাক. Mother used to read this to us, and we used to ask her to read more of this and not the other serious ones. However, most of my reading is in English, my first language, and Enid Blyton, P.G. Wodehouse, Jane Austen, and Thomas Hardy's were among childhood favorites. Beauty is an integral part of our expression, and it is embodied in the writings of all our greatest poets and writers. Bankim Chandra Chatterjee's Vande Mataram, Mahakavi Kalidas's Meghdutam, Gurudev Tagore's creations are full of this beauty with a deep reverence for nature. Vande Mataram, I bow to you, O Mother. Sujalam Sufilam Malaya Shitalam, Shashya Shambalam Mataram, Vande Mataram. Translation of some of its stanzas runs as, I bow to the one endowed with cool mountainous waters, lush green forests, to the night made beautiful by soft, clear moonlight, to the one beautified by blossoming trees, to the one with the beautiful smile, to the one with sweet speech, to the one who blesses with happiness. To that mother I bow. Even though they may sound different and have different scripts, our vernacular languages share the same love for Radha and Krishna, influenced by the Vaishnav movement. Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is a famous 16-word Vaishnav mantra of Lord Krishna, first appearing in the Kali Santarana Upanishad. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Beauty defines Mahakavi Kalidas's Meghdutam. The entire poem is a celebration of beauty. It is the lament of a yaksha pining for his wife after being separated from her because of a punishment for negligence of duty. It abounds in many forms of beauty: Bhasha Saundarya, Nisarg Saundarya, Stri Saundarya, Vichar Saundarya. Kalidasa compares the Kailash mountain to a lover, with the city of Alaka lying on the lap of her lover, and the pure white Ganges, the garment which is dropped by the lady, the city. We have all heard this story, of course, where Mahakavi Kalidas had won over people's hearts and minds with the incredible beauty of his expression. At a glittering meet of Sanskrit scholars to assess the best among them, judges had found it difficult to come to a conclusion and finally placed a dry tree trunk before them, asking them to describe it. The Sanskrit scholars said, Shushkam Kashtam Tishati Agre. And Kalidasa responded with the melodious, rhythmic, beautiful Neerasa Tarubara Purata Bhage. Our beloved Nobel laureate poet Rabindranath Tagore has gifted us poetic and musical treasures to last lifetimes. They offer philosophical principles to lead a beautiful life. Look at the song Amar Shokol Dukher Prodip, a tender and intense song that tells us pain can be transformed and offered up as worship. আমার সকল দুঃখের প্রদীপ জেলে দিবস গেলে করব নিবেদন আমার ব্যথার পূজা হয়নি সমাপন. I really wish I could have sung this a little, but my voice hasn't recovered yet and it just cracks up, so I'm not going to put you through the torture. Finally, I'll end with this response to what Gennia had asked about my experience of our languages, and that is a feeling of wonder and awe at the great depths of understanding and the immense beauty they convey so eloquently. And I think rather than kind of directly stating about our culture and tradition in my work subconsciously, kind of reflects the aesthetics and is aligned with nature, the mountains, trees, and the universe. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was a lovely, lovely answer, and yes, it was highly informative. I got to know so much more about more than the vernacular language that I am I am actually acclimatized with. Yes, I didn't know so much. So thank you so much.
Thank
So
you.
moving on to Akhila, ma'am. Ma'am, what do you think? How did you react? What was your experience of listening to the vernacular prose and poetry as a child? And what were the insights that you gathered?
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
We can
sorry.
both hear you and see you.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you, Gennia and TMYS for having me here. And Smeetha, that was a very rich account of the history and origin of the vernacular languages.
So much.
So now coming back to the question, so I was born and brought up in Bhilai, a small town in Chhattisgarh, which was a part of Madhya Pradesh then. And because of that, I was sorry, I'm disconnecting. I think there is some issue with the network here. So I was coming back to what I was saying. So I was born and brought up in a very cosmopolitan atmosphere, and where there were people from the different states of the country, and I grew up listening to folk tales and vernacular stories from different communities. So and thanks to the community because I could understand little bit of Bengali like verses which Smeetha just now narrated, and I think. Also my family had a very important role in shaping my literary endeavors, though I'm a native of Kerala, but I could not read or write Kerala despite my parents persistent efforts. So Hindi was the language in which I was most comfortable, and I think the if you remember, there was a cartoon called Chacha Chaudhary, and then as Smeetha said, Kabir's dohe was like an everyday affair. You could hear it any in movies or in usual conversations, everyday conversations. Plus I think one poet which really shaped my personality, my attitude, and even my writing in later part of my life was Ramdhari Singh Dinkar. So because he used to, and we had lot of poems in our school curriculum, and he was a poet who used to write really inspiring poems and a lot of poems and creative works on the social issues. So that is something which really inspired me. Apart from that, there were not only books, but there were day to day conversations. Like I remember how one of my uncles, once I was cutting my nails during the evening time, and one of my uncles told that you should not be doing this, and then he narrated the entire story of Hiranyakashyap, that how he was killed by Narsimha, the incarnation of Vishnu, by the use of nails. So I think these kind of narratives dominated in our lives those times. So that's how I grew up, and that's how these narratives, through conversations or through books, influenced my life, influenced my readings, and even writing in the later part of my life. And I had a very rich culture and atmosphere in my home, because my father is also a writer and he's a voracious reader. Plus, my sister is also a reader, and my mom is also into readings. And I don't know if you'll be able to believe, but it was my mom who introduced to me Kamla Das, who is a very great poet from Kerala. And my relatives used to say, no, you shouldn't, because of the way she used to treat the themes. And at those times she was a little bit controversial, and though celebrated, but not every parent would advise their uh, children, especially girl child, to read her works. But it was my mom who introduced her to me and said, okay, right now you cannot read her, but maybe later part of life, because she could connect a lot being a woman. And then somehow, she used to tell me the themes. And during my teenage years, I started exploring her poems. So these were the narratives which I was majorly exposed to, and really shaped my thinking, thought processes by reading and writing. That's all.
Yes, thank you so much. So starting from means our own Bengali, and then charting the entire origin from the Sanskrit to Tamil, and then to the modern vernacular languages. And yes, yours also a very cosmopolitan outtake. So yes, thank you so much. So moving to the second question of the session. So actually, children being exposed to the internet and the social media, and obviously the Indian diversity, as also that you can see, being means living in a cosmopolitan city, and not only city, the diversity is actually getting through and through in other parts of India as well. So how do vernacular prose and poetry seem relevant for children when we think about the learning values and culture of India? Hoimuntidi, would you like to begin?
Yeah, so before starting to speak about how it is relevant, first, I would like to tell that what is indigenous expression, or what do we actually mean by indigenous expression? Because I have worked towards it. I believe that it has a very important part to play in being relevant, as well as shaping up a personality for children. So indigenous expressions can be divided into basically three parts: oral, performative, and knowledge based. So oral would be poems, stories, riddles, jokes, legends and myths, even lullabies. uh, and performative would be kind of dance drama. It's a combination of poetry, storytelling, music, and dance. So, for example, you might have seen Chow dance, or even Ram Leela, um, and Tamasha, Yakshagana, and puppetry. As children, we all see that. Then knowledge based would be the folk beliefs, like Akhila was saying, that the belief system that these are certain things not to be done, these are the things you should do. So sometimes there used to be certain mantras. You chant those mantras and you do good in your exams, and things like that. And apart from that, there is folk medicine also, in which even today there are people who would say that if you have cough and cold, just eat ginger with honey. So that's a kind of folk medicine. So now I would come back to why is it relevant? Why is it relevant to the 21st century children? First is that narrative structures your personality and your belief systems. So it creates an individual identity in children based on knowledge of the traditions as well as contemporary experiences. So it is important to know both the belief systems and the counter belief systems. Now, here I would like to talk about an example from Bengal, Durga Puja, right? So we all know why Durga Puja is celebrated. There is a narrative across across our community that there is a triumph of good over evil, and goddess Durga came and killed Mahisasur, and won a lot of safety for children, which is all of us. Now there is another in the same region. There is a district called Purulia district. In there are certain tribes called Asura tribes. Okay, so these people actually believe that they are the descendants of Mahisasur. So they do not celebrate Durga Puja as we do. So the narrative across their community and certain different tribes related to them, they have this that Mahisasur was great person. He was a tribal king, and he did a lot of penance and got a boon from gods. And when he got boon from God, God should not give if they don't think it is okay to give that boon. But God gave a boon that you would not be killed by any man. But obviously the gods could not keep that, and there are powers who were into destruction of Mahisasur. And so these 9 days of Navratri, what they do is they mourn. In the morning hours, they don't come out of their houses. They just come out of the houses in the night. And on the 10th day, they actually mourn and pray to their ancestor Mahisasur. So these are two, belief system, which is the mainstream belief system and the belief system. So it promotes analysis and consumption of true knowledge. If you know both of it, uh, also the mainstream belief system and also the counter belief system, that will give you the power to analyze what you feel, or analyze according to you what is correct. So there are different truths, and what is the truth according to you. So, for example, the mainstream narrative in mythology or history promotes, certain characters, while marginalize certain characters due to power struggles, maybe political or sometimes cultural even. For example, in Assamese historical ballad, there is a ballad called Maniram Divaner Geet. Okay, so Maniram was an Assamese freedom fighter who was hung in by the British during the first, freedom struggle. So many freedom fighters lost their lives in this particular time. But then some people are remembered because their narrative is there in the mainstream, and some people who did not have that power or did not have the presence in the mainstream, they did not get that limelight. We could not say limelight, but then they were not remembered much. But the Assamese historical ballad is about Maniram. Okay, another, if I remember, another ballad from Assam is Bar Phukanar Geet. So it narrates basically the events from 1815 to 1824. Okay, so the time was of Burmese invasion. So during Burmese invasion, Assam was passed on to the British. Before that, Ahom kingdom was there. It was not in the hands of British. So after this Burmese invasion, they I think signed a treaty or something, Treaty of Yandabu, I suppose, and then it was passed on to the British. So this particular narrative is not in the mainstreams. We do not read it in the history, right? But it is there in the folk ballads. Another thing, I would say that this, if you read both the narratives, if children are getting the access of both the narratives, they will certainly culturally develop rather than being a being a product of power driven society. And the next thing I would like to say, that one more thing they learn or how it is relevant is that folk closeness to our ecosystem. So the preservation, the conservation of environment as well as culture is promoted through folk, and we can find examples in Nepalese folklore. According to this folklore, during the month of Savan, no instruments are to be played, and the noise should be at the bare minimum, because gods are supposed to have come down for their yearly resting period, and they should not be disturbed if you want a good harvest post that. So that is one certain storylines which makes us understand that how important is ecosystem for us. Even we can understand it by seeing the tribal gods. Yeah, so tribal gods are basically forces of nature. Like in Sundarban area, Mineshwari is a fish god, and before going to fishing, the tribes actually pray to Mineshwari. Then in Rajbangshi community in North Bengal, Shona Roy, Rupa Roy, these are two tiger deities. Yeah, and in the forest, Vana Durga is another goddess who sits on a shaura tree. We can also find it in Nicobarese tribe, where before clearing out a forest, they would, pray and ask that if there is a permission to do that to the forest god. And even there are pig sacrifice. They sacrifice pig, and to make the forest god happy, so that they would be given this permission to do this, clear out this particular part of the forest and grow their vegetables and stuff, and then do shifting. So we can understand by this that marginalized narratives are quite equally capable to provide relevant perspectives even in 21st century, as they talk about the cultural and ecological preservation, which is the most important thing which we talk about now.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Dee. Yes, it was an eye opener, and yeah, the teaching children about the mainstream narrative and the counter narrative obviously instills a way to judge as to what is the truth and what is the actual knowledge that has to be achieved. Yes, that is a very good point. Thank you so much. Now, moving on to Akhila, ma'am. Ma'am, what do you think? Uh, how is the vernacular prose and poetry instill values and culture of India in today's children in the 21st century, and how is it relevant?
Yeah, so I believe that India is a country which live in many centuries, right? And the India where we lived like 30 years back, it's very, where we grew up 30 years back is very different from the current generation. And today's India is more dominated by, OTT, Netflix, and all those stuff. But even in those platforms, you will see that how much they are, utilizing the stories of from the, from the regional places. And those stories are becoming very popular because somehow we feel, after viewing those stories, that we feel very rooted to our culture and community. And such narratives are very important and it's very important to pass on these narratives so that our children are rooted to their culture, the heritage, and they are rooted to the community system. Plus, it connects us back and the children back to their history. So that is very important. So recently I was working on a paper on the cultural aspect of the Kashmiri Pandits who were exiled from the region. And when I was reading those narratives, I realized that how much, because they live in exile, the entire generation is living in exile. So how disconnected the subsequent generations are, and future generations would be. And if you'll see, the writers also, like I had taken the works of writers like Rahul Pandita, Siddharth Gigu, and other anthology writers, short story writers, and poets. And if you'll see, they write with the purpose of passing on their stories, their history, their culture, to which they are no more connected. So that's the power of these stories. And plus, it helps us to shape the children morally. It instills a sense of moral duties in children. So look, if you remember the stories of Panchatantra, the crocodile story, or the Kachua versus the tortoise versus the rabbit story. So those kind of all those stories. Even I was talking about Ramdhari Singh Dinkar's poems. Harivansh Rai Bachchan was another poet whom I grew up reading, and I really admired his poems. So all these stories somehow has, as Haimanti was telling, that these stories, prose and poetry, has a lot of potential to build our personality. Plus, during dark times, because it's not only what you read, but how you apply your knowledge to the real life and your challenges which you face during your dark times. And sometimes very little morals, these stories, come for your rescue. This has happened to me personally. So there is a lot of message, there are a lot of messages and insights hidden in these stories and narratives. And that's why it's very important to pass it on from one generation to another. Otherwise, I mean, they validate, they substantiate our existence, they keep us rooted to our culture and community.
Thank you so much. Yes, Smeetha ma'am has been able to join again, so that's a good thing. I was actually trying to connect to you as to what happened to your network. Anyway, let's. Okay, Smeetha ma'am, could you please tell us about what the relevance of vernacular prose and poetry has for today's 21st century children in terms of learning values and culture?
Yeah, thank you, Gennia. Okay, so as Haimanti and Akhila both have mentioned, vernaculars are very important in conveying our deep beliefs, traditional systems, and the local knowledge which may not be carried in other ways. So the vernacular carries it. And the best thing is, a child is first introduced to the world of literature in poetry and stories through the mother tongue. So songs, lullabies, poems learnt in childhood in the mother tongue or the vernacular, they become the building block of a literary storehouse in the child. And that aids in learning languages later. The cadence, the rhythm, and sound of words remain forever. So, vernacular presence is very strong, even if the medium of instruction later is in English or other languages. And very deep learnings and understanding and customs and systems of existence within the local regions are kind of ensured with the vernacular knowledge, that which other languages may not be able to impart. And the happy news today is that the translation takes pride of place in the literary world, with the most important prizes going to translated works instead of the original ones. So the doors are opening to our treasures in vernaculars. And even as I speak, Oscar winning Gulzar is translating Tagore into Hindi for children. and there's much more excitement in store. So suddenly, vernacular prose and poetry are acquiring even more relevance for children in today's 21st century India, in spite of all the technical, offerings and gadgets and video games and everything. I think they'll each become more interesting and kind of spur each other on.
Yes, that's true. Yes, vernacular prose translation, poetry translation has indeed gained the momentum, but particularly when we see about the translation from Ret Samadhi, the translation of Ret Samadhi into the Tomb of Sand. Yes, it has gained some momentum, and it has obviously brought the author herself into the limelight, who was so hidden behind before. So, yes. Now, coming to the individualized section, I will start with Akhila ma'am. Ma'am, you are a creative writer and a book reviewer. Would you like to tell us about the vernacular influence in your writing and also in the writings of other authors that you particularly found spectacular?
So as I said, I one of my favorite poems is Kamla Das because I connect with her works like anything because I think that I'm a feminist and I deeply feel for gender issues, not only women issues, but people belonging or identifying themselves with any of the genders. And she was an iconoclast quite much ahead of her time, who wrote on issues which were, even today, even in 21st century, nothing has been changed much. And you will see a lot of sexism in everyday lives, whether it's your professional area, whether it's your relationship, whether it's your home or anywhere else. So her poems and her works, prose as well, shaped my thinking a lot and helped me to understand, our uh, because it's most her works were mostly about the quest of identity, equality, and a lot of sensuality and a lot of other things. And I realized that okay, if I'm expecting to be treated equally, or I'm having a certain kind of desires, so it is okay. So a lot of us do have such desires, and but the problem is nobody talks about it because of a lot of shame and inhibition. But she was something who brought into the limelight a lot of things which we usually ignore to talk. So I think my works, I wouldn't say that I try to write like her, but yeah, because you can see in my works are mostly confessional. The poetry is mostly confessional. Even the fiction is inspired by my own life experiences, and that is something I have seen in her works. Maybe it has influenced me a lot. Another poet, a bilingual poet, is Mamta Kalia. She is also a tremendous poet who talks and writes on women's issues and her very little things about mundane issues which affect women. And her there is one poem written by her, Khanti Gharelu Aurat, which talks about the housewife, and for a long time, everybody used to think that that is the most easiest thing to be, to be safe, to be provided with everything, but how they themselves struggle with a lot of things in their daily lives. Her poems also talk about the quest of identity, and that is something I started reading her very late, but I realized that the kind of themes I like to think upon or to write about are quite similar to this poet as well. And other works, another very contemporary and very young poet who is again my favorite is Urvashi Bahaguna. She has written her debut poetry work, Terrarium, which revolves around her relationship with this world, nature, ecosystem, plus issues on mental health and a lot of nostalgia about childhood and very mundane things like her first relationship, the migraine, and her relationship with women in her life. And then her second book is a collection of essays on mental health. So I think I connect with lot with these three writers from Urvashi Bahuguna is very contemporary and very younger to us, I guess. And then Kamla Das and Mamta Kalia. So, yeah, so these are the poets who influenced me a lot and, compelled me to think a lot.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now, moving on to Haimanti Dev. So, you are wonderfully and consistently creating awareness and about indigenous culture, art, and literature in every platform that you get. You don't even leave LinkedIn. I follow you there. So, please tell us about the study of indigenous expressions and how can they inspire children if there is a proper access.
See, first of all, I would say that there is the access is very less. So as we were growing, the mainstream narrative was much of what we read, and still it is there. Now there are certain people who are coming up with the folk narratives as well, which is kind of a fresh breath, and I'm sure that it is relevant because I just talked about that. Why is it relevant? Because first, that it gives you clarity, it gives you power to analyze, it gives you certain responsibility to decide what you believe in and what you not. And finally, that the preservation and conservation of what we our culture and also our environment, our ecology, how important is all of that. So I feel that indigenous are narratives which expresses the statements which are generally not talked about or generally not in the mainstream. So I think that if that is also read and that is also accessible, and probably if that is a part of the textbooks for children, that would give them a lot more clarity or lot more you can say ideologies which is only on one ground, which is there in the mainstream. So I believe it is very important.
Thank you so much. Now, moving on to Smeetha ma'am. Ma'am, you have your own rich body of poetry and you also run a literary platform. Do you think that translation of vernacular literature creates equal impact on children as does the original?
Yes, I believe it does. Um, Growing up, I read a lot of Russian literature in English. Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, and they were only accessible because they were in English, and they were in my father's collection. And I remember, and especially because they seemed like Borodir boy. The elder things which elder people, the grown-ups read. It was more attractive, and they were enchanting. So and I didn't know anything about the original, right? I mean, I didn't know Russian, so I had nothing to compare with. So I believe it's a very, very positive process, and translation is a powerful act of sharing, and it multiplies the impact of the original creation. I have that belief, and the original and the translation coexist as strong, independent literary offerings on their own merit. The two need not be compared because the joy each offers to its reader is unique. And if the readers are different, then there is no problem. However, if the same person who loved, let's say, a story in Bengali, Bankim Chandra, he read in Bengali, and then he read English and he was disappointed. I mean, it could happen, right? And it's human here to compare. So, but I think if there is a translation in English of a vernacular languages, there could be very good chances that the two audiences are different. The person who read it in the original is different from the one who would be reading in the vernacular or English translation. So it's a very, very magical thing to be a translator and be able to carry not just the words and the correct the correct spellings and the words. It's to convey that sentiment and that magic that is there in the original text. So my favorites also, because I do a lot of reading in English, my favorite translators are Arunavu Sinha and he has exceptional Bengali translations in English. And Shomrita Urni Ganguly, who's another very gifted translator beyond measure. So, and coming to my own work, I think it reflects in a very natural way what I have imbibed and learned about a heritage and culture over the years. So, in my earlier poems, I see that there used to be a lot of sprinkling of Hindi, old favorite Hindi songs to highlight a moment or an emotion. It used to be again a very organic process. I didn't do it forcibly. There's something that happened that almost responding to nuances of time, the atmosphere, emotion, the alignments, and that phase has passed. I can't do it now. I've tried, it just doesn't happen naturally, So, yeah, that's what I would say. That I think we are at a very happy juncture with most of the all the JCB prizes this year have gone to translated works. Red Samadhi, of course, we are all aware how what kind of a sensation worldwide, kind of news it created. So I think we are at a very happy space right now with a lot of opportunities opening up.
Ma'am, was that means the thing that you said about your own work? Was it your own technique of means connecting the global readers with the rich uh, regional heritage and culture of India? Means sprinkling of
I don't
words,
think I no
indigenous
no. I
words.
think I was just kind of pleasing myself really. I just wanted that song to be there, and I took risks because nobody added Hindi like
So
that to an English poem. I mean, I just did it, and I liked the effect. Yeah, and I kept doing it for quite some poems. And yeah, but I think, like I said, that phase has passed. I don't know whether for the good or the bad, but yeah, I don't find it so easy to do it anymore.
okay, okay. Thank you so much, ma'am. But I would like to conclude with you, ma'am. Means conclude the last very question. That is, if you were a Santa, what would be your advice to a child? Smeetha, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you so much. I have a poem for that. This is a poem from Santa to all children listening in. A poem for you and earth till eternity. Inspiration, adventure, the woods, the trees, little woodpeckers, the snow and the sun, rivers, mountains, streams, oceans, your invaluable circles of family, friends, learning, and fun. May they, um, may they make deep inroads into your hearts. Worship them, learn from them, protect them, be inspired by their limitless beauty. Let your mind be like the open sky, boundless, abundant, full of dreams. Be the light, be the heart of love that saves someone. Be the tender touch of kindness that changes someone's life forever. Be the beacon of hope that lights up the dreams and ambitions of thousands, making the world a better place. Be a rainbow after the storm, cheering up hearts by being strong. It's a long poem, but I'll stop here. Thank
Yeah,
you
but
so
it was
much.
a very good poem with a very positive message. Thank you so much. Same goes for Akhila Mohan, ma'am. Ma'am, what would be your advice to a child if you were a Santa?
That's a very difficult question for me, to be honest. But yeah, any child, I would always suggest only one thing: to be happy and to live your life to the fullest. Be kind and be happy. That's all.
And to conclude the entire session, Homuntidi, if you have any advice to a child if you were a Santa?
If I were a Santa, I would suggest them to learn more languages and to talk more to people and gain, different stories from different cultures. And, yeah, so this is the thing I would say to the children.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, everyone. And I would like to thank from the bottom of my heart to all the panelists. Thank you for being there in this panel discussion. It was a really rich and insightful discussion today. And yes, poetry and prose are the carriers of human perception, emotions, values, and culture, and many more. But it is very important to read and write in our own vernacular language, particularly among the children. That practice should be inculcated. And why so? Because it keeps us rooted to our origin, and it also helps us understand our culture as well as help us in contextualizing our present society and our everyday human life. So only when we remain true to our own roots can we actually create something new. So thank you so much. And yes, please do not forget that we are actually having submissions for the letters from Santa. Please go on. And also, the writing program from Tell Me Your Story season 9 is going on. So please, we hope that people come forward and participate in it. So till then, stay blessed, stay happy, stay safe. Good night.